Well, it's so good to have all of you with us today. My name is Chris, and we're part 3 of this series, Frantic. Now, think about years and years and years ago. I mean, the Beatles had taken the world by storm. I mean, they were dominating everything. They were dominating record sales, the radio airwaves. They were dominating stadiums, and they had just released their first movie to critical acclaim. In fact, this picture wouldn't be taken until years later, but this is a famous Abbey Road picture. I mean, this iconic picture just encapsulates the success that they were, experiencing. And right after they released A Hard Day's Night, that movie, they started to work on their second movie. And, they had a placeholder for a title for their second movie. That title was 8 Arms to Hold You. That wouldn't be the ending title, but they just needed somewhere to start. John Lennon goes into the studio to start writing music for this, upcoming movie. And years later, he actually started to talk about that song that would guide the band, that song that would actually guide the movie, that song. And as he reflected back, he said, when I was writing that song, I didn't realize how much help I needed. Looking back, he didn't realize the pressure that the entire band was facing and that they needed help. Eventually, that song became the title of their second movie. And these are some of the lyrics from this famous rock and roll song. When I was younger, so much younger than today, I never needed anybody's help in any way. But now these days are gone and I'm not so self-assured. Now I find I've changed my mind. I've opened up the doors. Help me if you can. I'm feeling down. And I do appreciate you being around. Help me get back my feet on the ground. Won't you please, please help me? Help. I need somebody help. Not just anybody help. I need somebody help. You see, I think about that song, the Beatles. I mean, they were at the tippy top of the mountain of success. And they found themselves needing help. In fact, all of us in frantic seasons find ourselves needing help. In frantic seasons when we feel the pressure and we need help. Frantic seasons when we're not sure how to make it through the next day, we need help. Frantic seasons where it feels like we're suffocating and we just need help. Well, in this series, Frantic, we're making our way through part of the story, the Exodus story, found in the book of Exodus. And in part 1, we started off this entire series focusing on this question. What if God allows frantic moments to help us learn how to let go and trust Him? And when I wrote that question, I'm like, that's the right question. But also when I wrote this question, I kind of felt like it was kind of a wimpy kind of question. This is what I mean. It's true. I mean, what if God allows frantic moments to help us learn how to let go and trust Him? But when I wrote the question, I'm like, yeah. What if God causes? That feels a little bit more pointed. That feels a little bit more direct. That feels a little bit more like my frantic moments in my life. Like, hey, God, what if you cause these frantic moments, not just to help? Again, that feels a little passive. To make us learn, to force us to learn, to put some pressure on us to learn how to let go and trust Him. In fact, I know in my life, specifically the frantic moments, the frantic seasons, it feels a lot more like this. But ultimately, what I know is God desires for me to learn, for you to learn. In part 1, we looked at the part of the story as God leading the Israelites out of captivity, out of slavery. And not just once, but multiple times, God led them to a dead end. I mean, literally, to a dead end. One point, he had them backtrack, retrace their steps, another dead end. He placed them in between the Egyptian army and the Red Sea. But God continued to do what only God could do. And God delivered them. God led them. God rescued them. God led them through the sea on dry ground. And when they got to the other side, we looked at this amazing moment where they all started to worship God. God placed a heart on Moses and Aaron and Miriam's heart. They taught this song to everyone, and hundreds of thousands of Israelites were singing and worshiping and dancing and playing instruments. I mean, you could just imagine the scene. And this is where we're going to pick up this part of the story. God then starts to lead them once again, God through Moses. And we're told that Moses led Israel from the Red Sea, and they went into the desert, into the wilderness of Shur. And just imagine, again, hundreds of thousands of people. I mean, they just witnessed God part the Red Sea, had them walk across on dry ground, saved them from Egypt. They're singing and dancing, music, and all of a sudden they start moving again through the desert. And for 3 days, they traveled. For 3 days, they traveled in the desert without finding water. Now, if you've ever been around a desert, you know how hot and dry it is. And for 3 days, they couldn't find water. Now, I wonder at what point, on what day, what hour of what day did the singing start to fade, the dancing start to fade, the timbrels start to be placed down? At what point did the worship stop? When they came to Marah, they could not drink its water because it was bitter. The term is, it was like brackish water. It was a mixture of fresh water and salt water. It was just undrinkable. Could you imagine how frustrated they must have been? Could you imagine how disillusioned they must have been? Could you imagine as they saw the water from the distance, and all of a sudden they made their way up, and all of a sudden people started to run up to drink the water, and all of a sudden as they started to drink their water, 3 days without having it, they started to drink it and they started to spit it out. Could you imagine the intensity of that moment? Years ago, my good friend Jeff and I went on a multi-day mountain biking trip in Moab, Utah. In fact, I'm on the very end there. Jeff, my friend, is also in red right next to me. And then Jeff's two friends who lived in a different state, they met us there in Utah. This is a picture from the very first day. We left early in the morning, drove straight to Moab. We got out, got all of our bikes out, and we were going to ride that afternoon the world famous Slick Rock Trail. I was so excited. Now, at this point, as we were getting ready to ride, the temperature in the shade was about 105 degrees. Meaning in the sun, it was well over 115. I remember Jeff asking all of us, hey, do you all have enough water? And I had several bottles on my bike. I had a Camelback on my back. I was set. Everyone quickly said, yeah, we had enough water. We got on our bikes and we started to make our way on the Slick Rock Trail. And it was epic. The climbs, the descents. I mean, I learned so much. It was great. About halfway through the ride, all of a sudden, Jeff had kind of found me as we were kind of all spread out. He found me. He goes, hey, we have a situation. I said, what's the situation? He goes, you have enough water. I'm like, oh, I'm still really good. I have more water in my Camelback. He goes, my two friends, they didn't bring enough. They're out. Well, again, the temperature was up over 115. We started having to ration water, and the conversation quickly started to shift. Do we have enough water to make it to the end? I'll never forget, we came around this bend, and there's this massive rock, and we laid our bikes right here. You can see a couple of them at the bottom of the picture. We laid our bikes down, and right behind the bikes was this massive kind of rock where we could kind of climb and lean against and get some shade. It was so hot. We started talking about, what are we going to do? We had two driving questions. How much water do we have left? And how many miles do we have left? And we weren't sure about the number of miles left. But we were sure about how much water, and we didn't have much at all. We were discussing different plans, and I remember getting up from that spot, from that shade, and I started to make my way out to that edge. And I remember standing there, and I had several thoughts in my mind. The first thought was this: oh, this is how people die. I had lived in Vegas for many years, and you always heard stories about people going out into the desert, whether hiking or running or cycling, whatever it was, and not preparing for the conditions. You would hear those stories, and you think to yourself, how could anyone do that? And all of a sudden, I found myself standing there at that edge going, oh, we've just done that. I started thinking, like, I want to see my kids again. My kids were really young. I want to see my wife again. I'm like, oh, this is how people die. And my second thought, as I looked over the cliff, was, there's all that water. But we couldn't get to it. There was all that water. But there's no way we can make our way down in time and live. Needless to say, we all decided to try to ride back together, ration our water even more. We took it at a much slower pace, and we made our way back. But I tell you, for a period of time, it was a scary, scary moment. And I think about the Israelites as they're standing there, days without water, and they're in front of water, but they can't drink it. It's undrinkable. So what did the people do? They grumbled, saying, what are we to drink, Moses? Now, I want to highlight the fact that the question isn't the issue. That's the right question. They were asking for help. Hey, we need water, Moses. What are we to drink, Moses? This isn't good. The question was the right question. The question of help was the right help question. The issue was their attitude, that they grumbled, they complained, they would start to blame again. Right? This is just the pattern. It was their attitude attached to the question. Then Moses cried out to the Lord. Different attitude, different heart condition. He cried out to the Lord, and we're told that the Lord showed him. Now that word showed in the ancient Hebrew, the root part of that word is a word for teach, for instruction. And I love this insight that God was teaching Moses, who would then teach God's people, the Israelites. That God was showing, instructing, teaching, saying, hey, Moses, this is an important moment. God showed Moses a piece of wood, an ordinary stick, an ordinary log, an ordinary chunk of wood, something that had been discarded, something that was just laying on the ground, something that someone would have kicked, stepped over, ignored. But God showed Moses that piece of wood, and Moses knew what to do. He picked up that piece of wood, he threw it into the water, and the water became fit to drink. You see, with God, the ordinary becomes extraordinary. And we're told that there the Lord issued a ruling, an instruction for them. And he put them to the test. Remember the question? What if God causes to help make us, to try to force us, to apply pressure on us to learn? This is what God is doing. He sets up this entire structure to put them to the test, to see if they would let go and obey. And God said, if you this is the Israelites' part, this is our part. If you listen carefully to the Lord your God and do what is right, listen and do what is right in his eyes. If you pay attention, another way to listen, if you pay attention to his commands and keep all of his decrees, what is God calling for is obedience. Ultimately, what God wants for us is to trust him and obey him. Do you remember that old hymn? I love that hymn. Trust and obey, for there is no other way. To be happy in Jesus than to trust and obey. God puts incredible force on our lives to try to help us, to try to force us, to try to get us to trust him, to lean into him, to learn, to let go and trust. And here yet again, God just says, he just comes through the front door. He's like, hey, Israelites, your part, listen to me and do. Listen, pay attention and do. Obey, trust me and follow me. This is what I'm asking from you. And then God goes, this is my part. This is my part. This is my part. I will not bring on you any of the diseases I brought on the Egyptians. All those 10 plagues, he goes, I'm not going to do that. For I am the Lord who heals you. Hey, I am the Lord who is with you. I am the Lord. I will be enough for you. Your part, my part, our part. Trust and obey. Well, then God leads them from that bitter water turned fit to drinking. This is where God leads them. They came to Elim, where there were 12 springs and 70 palm trees. And they camped there near the water. Think about this. An amazing oasis. I mean, God made the first little area of water fit to drink. And then he leads them to say, hey, Israelites, you got to rely on me. Look where I led you to. Yep, I gave you enough water to keep going. But I knew on the other side that there was this amazing oasis, 12 springs. It's this image of enough water for all 12 tribes, 70 palm trees, enough shade to cover everyone. Again, I think about that moment in Moab where all of a sudden we found this huge rock and we sat in the shade, and it was just the relief from the heat was amazing. They had shade for everyone, and they were by the water. God's saying, hey, I will give you enough in the desert, and also, hey, I'm going to lead you to spaces and places where you're going to have abundance. Just rely on me. Rely on me. I got you covered. Well, they left out from there and they started to walk again. They started to wander again, and God led them right back into yet another desert, another wilderness. And as they were wandering through that other desert, that other wilderness, well, this is what we're told. The Israelites said, if only we had died, grumbling, complaining, blaming, if only we had died by the Lord's hands in Egypt. There we sat around with pots of meat and ate all the food we wanted, but you have brought us into this desert to starve the entire assembly to death. Now, we got to pause there. They are 30 days out of captivity, only 30 days. And they have witnessed God do amazing things. Think about this action list. This is what they had witnessed God do in 30 days. God was leading them by pillar of fire, a pillar of cloud. In fact, he moved both of those pillars and separated them from the Egyptian army and them so they could sleep all night. God parted the water. God dried the ground. They didn't even get their boots muddy as they walked through the Red Sea. No, God's like, I'm going to dry the ground. No muddy boots for you. And then, oh, by the way, God confused the soldiers. He jammed their wheels. He released the water. He even led them to a place where he debittered the water. I don't know if debittered is a word, but hey, we're going to go with it. He said to Moses, throw the wood in there. Took the bitterness out. And he led them to an oasis. An amazing space for them. They had seen God do what only God can do. And what do? They grumble and they complain. And how does God respond? Listen to God's patience. Then the Lord said to Moses, I will rain down bread from heaven for you, and the people are to go out each day and gather enough for that day. In this way, I will test them and see whether they will follow my instructions. On the sixth day, they are to, prepare what they bring in. That is to be twice as much as they gather on the other days. Let me break this down simply. Days 1 through 5, they're to go out, gather just enough food for that one day. Day 6, they're to gather a double portion for day 6 and for the next day, because the seventh day is a Sabbath, a day to rest. Then God says to Moses, I have heard the grumbling of the Israelites. Tell them, at twilight you will eat meat, and in the morning you'll be filled with bread. Again, they continue to grumble. They continue to complain. They continue to look backwards to their captivity, to their captors. And God's like, hey, I got you. Just rely on me. Then you will know that I am the Lord your God. And guess what? That evening, quail came in and covered the camp. In the morning, there was a layer of dew around the camp. When the dew was gone, thin flakes like frost on the ground appeared on the desert floor. When the Israelites saw it, they said to each other, well, what is it? For they did not know what it was. And Moses said to him, it is the bread the Lord has given you to eat. Then Moses reminded them yet again, no one is to keep any of it until morning. Just get enough for this day. And guess what happens? We're told that some of them paid no attention to Moses, and they kept part of it until morning, but it was full of maggots and began to smell. So Moses was angry. Moses was frustrated with all of them. And then he reminds them yet again of God's instructions. He said to them, this is what the Lord commanded. Tomorrow is to be a day of Sabbath rest, a holy Sabbath to the Lord. Hey, remember, sixth day, gather a double portion. Get all the food ready for that day and for the next day. Why? Because the seventh day is a day of rest, Sabbath. It's holy. It's a command. And remember, this is before the 10 Commandments. We haven't gotten to the 10 Commandments part of the story. You see, the Sabbath gets tied all the way back to creation, where God modeled a rhythm of rest. That we're to work hard, yes. But on the seventh day, we rest. We reflect. We focus on God, a God who provides. Well, here we go again. Not all the Israelites paid attention. We're told that some of the people went out on the seventh day to gather it, but they found none. Then the Lord said to Moses, how long will you refuse to keep my commands? Translated, how long will you and all of the people refuse to keep my commands and instructions? Bear in mind that the Lord has given you the Sabbath. That is why on the sixth day he gives you bread for 2 days. Everyone is to stay where they are. And on the seventh day, no one is to go out. So the people rested on the seventh day. Over and over again, God said, hey, just rely on me. Over and over again, God brought to the Israelites everything that he said he would. He's like, I'm going to lead you. I'm going to guide you. You just have to rely on me. I will give you what you need. You see, I think about this question. What if God causes frantic moments to put so much pressure, force on our lives so that we learn how to let go and trust him? What if the frantic moment you're facing right now, God has caused? Why? Because he wants you to know. You just got to let go and trust. You got to let go and trust. You got to let go and trust. So here's how I want to encourage you. First, you got to ask for help. Got to ask for help. Remember, them asking the question for help wasn't the issue. It was a heart condition. It was the grumbling. It was the complaining. It was the blaming. But God desires for us to go to him and ask for help. He wants to help us. And in fact, God places people around us so that they can help us. Do you realize that? That's how God usually helps us, through the lives of other people. A while back, I was navigating through some leadership challenges, and I reached out to a great leader, a great friend of mine, and I just said, hey, can I buy you coffee? And I just need 90 minutes, 2 hours with you, but I'll buy you coffee. Do you have that time? And I know how busy he is, but guess what? He's also a friend, and he quickly replied, no, you're not going to buy me coffee. I'll buy the coffee, and yes, I'd love to meet with you. And I remember that morning we sat down together, and I asked a bunch of questions, leaned into his wisdom, his insight, and I tell you, what God said to him and through him to me has guided me over the past months. God asked for help. I'm one of the worst people when it comes to help. I'm just telling you. We got to ask for help, and God will send the right people into our lives to help us. We got to realize that God's going to give us enough for today. And then tomorrow it will repeat. But so many times, and I'm guilty of this, fear, anxiety, worry is all about tomorrow, isn't it? All of our fear, all of our anxiety isn't so much about today. It's about tomorrow, the next week, the next month, the next year. So when we start focusing down the road and all of a sudden we're like, oh no, what if? And God repeatedly says, oh, whoa, time out. I'll give you enough for today. I mean, the entire structure for 40 years for the Israelites. Days 1 through 5, gather enough for that day. Day 6, double portion. One for that day and one for the Sabbath rest. For 40 years, God was creating a habit for the Israelites to remind them, I will take care of you. I will give you enough for today. Then tomorrow, we'll get there tomorrow. And guess what? God always shows up tomorrow. For some of you, you need to get your eyes off of tomorrow and focus on today, what God is doing in you and through you today. For some of you, you're so paralyzed with fear about tomorrow, the next day, the next week, the next year. And God's like, no. I've promised you, I will give you what you need. It will be enough for today. And God will whisper, when we get to tomorrow, I got you covered there as well. What's in your hands? What's in your hands? God takes the ordinary and does the extraordinary. God goes, hey, Moses, there's a piece of wood. Yeah, I'm going to make the water drinkable. Just take that piece of wood, throw it in the water. God took the ordinary and did something extraordinary. And for some of you, you're thinking to yourself, well, how could God do anything with me, with my talents, my gifts, my dreams, my job, my paycheck, my situation, because you just think it's all ordinary. And you know what God says to you? Guess what? I can take any ordinary, and I'm one of the ordinary people. God goes, I can take the ordinary and do something extraordinary. Just be faithful. Let go and trust. What's in your hands right now? Maybe you think there's nothing. And I just want to say to you, God looked at Moses, who didn't want to be the leader of the Israelites. And Moses bent down, picked up an ordinary piece of wood, a stick, and God made all the water drinkable. What's in your hands right now? I'm just telling you. Don't overlook the ordinary that God can do the extraordinary with. And remember, rest is a command. That rest is a command. That the Sabbath is a day to keep holy, to breathe deep, to reflect on what God is doing and will continue to do. That rest is how God designed us, created us to live in rhythm with Him. Are you relying on God? I remember it was late 2020, early 2021, and we were just trying to keep churches open. So much leadership, so much wisdom, so much insight just around, again, trying to keep churches open, being closed down with COVID, reopening, and it was just, it was all out, roll up our sleeves. How do we keep churches not thriving? We weren't in thriving mode. We were just, how do we keep them open? It felt like we had just rolls of duct tape. And we were just, duct taping everything. There was a list of things we had stopped throughout COVID that we didn't bring back, we couldn't bring back. I remember it was late on a Tuesday night, and we were sitting around a table. It was our financial strategy team. It's a group of incredible business leaders who love God's church, and they just help bring so much business wisdom and insight. And we're sitting around a table, and they realized how much we had duct taped all of our churches together just to keep them open, keep them going. And all of a sudden, one of the leaders asked the right question. She goes, if you could bring back one thing that you had stopped through COVID, if you could bring back one thing that you stopped, and if money wasn't the issue, that would create momentum, that would create connection, that would create movement within all of our churches, that would have the biggest impact within our churches, what would that one thing be? Immediately, myself and another leader, Mary Ruth, we said the same thing at the same moment. It was like stereo. We said, donuts. Donuts. You see, there's something spiritual about food. There just is. You think about the story we just looked at. God, for 40 years, feeding. The best meat, the quail, the best bread. He fed them. There's something spiritual about food. In Acts 2, when the church started, they had a meal together. Jesus, we call it communion. Another way to say communion is the Lord's Supper. They're having a meal, and Jesus takes the wine and the bread, something that was just very common for a Jewish meal in that culture. There's something spiritual about food. But we were looking at the dollar signs. We're looking at giving that had been impacted out of COVID. We're looking at just how do we pay for the power bills. We're looking at all of the numbers, and they're like, there's no way we can bring donuts back. You could feel the tension around the table. There's just no way. There's no way. And all of a sudden, we all looked at each other as we were staring at the P&Ls. We're like, we have to. And so we immediately brought donuts back. And guess what? Two things happened. First thing, our lobbies across all of our churches just came alive. People started to come to church a bit earlier and staying a lot later. Laughter erupted within our lobbies, within our auditoriums. Kids started to run around again, and balls started being thrown. I tell you, our churches came alive. Why? Because there's something spiritual about food. And the second thing, every year out of COVID, even though we have been financially so restricted, we've been in the black every year. God has provided. He just called us to let go, to rely, to trust in Him. We now just simply call it donut faith. If you hear any of our leaders say donut faith, this is what we call it. We call it donut faith. And you will hear this. All of a sudden, someone's like, I don't know if we can. I don't know. And all of a sudden, someone will say, don't have faith. God can take the ordinary and do something extraordinary with it. God just has called us to let go and rely on him. God has just called us as leaders to, yes, make wise decisions and to rely on him. What do you need to let go of? What do you need to let go on? What donut type of faith do you need to have right now? God has you. And he'll give you what you need for today. Let's pray. Lord, I just ask. That we will truly let go and trust you. That we will truly rely on you. God, over and over again, you've shown to be faithful. You've just called us to be faithful back in return. In your name I pray. Amen.